I'm Kay Falcon and welcome back to my channel. So you've already seen my review for episode 1 and 2 of, or my first impressions of the Rings of Power. Overall, so far, it has been very lackluster, very boring, and very forgettable. Episode 3, in some ways, was better, but also in some ways, worse. And I'll explain a little bit after that. But before I get into that, I just want to welcome all the new subscribers. Thank you guys for subscribing. I hope you guys like it here. If you are a new person to my channel and to this video, I would encourage you to also subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to get notified each time I make a post. Also, don't forget to like the video to show your support. I would really appreciate it, and leave a comment down below. I would like to hear your thoughts and opinions about the things I say in this topic. Now, let's just get this over with. It opens with Arondir being pulled by orcs in a montage that kind of shows him being delirious, you know, coming in and out of wakefulness. You hear mention of 4 Adar by the orcs, and I couldn't help but wonder if that was like supposed to remind you of Anatar. Then it comes up to the point where you see Arondir's co-workers. So in the previous episode I didn't talk about, they were about to leave because they got orders from Gil-galad to stop the watch. And then you saw the same warden and his friend who was like harping to him about Bronwyn. You saw them getting captured too. And my first thought was, who, what, why, when, and where? What are they doing there? How did they get captured? Like, you're telling me that they're watching for this village, but somehow they missed the orcs who captured them? Like, did they just let down their guard as soon as they got orders to return back? Like, how did they end up in the situation that they got out? There were humans there as well, being forced to work with building a tunnel. Arondir got thrust into just suddenly, yeah, you go work. And then his friend looked at him with a weird glance and then gave him an axe of some sort in order to dig. And I'm like, you do have weapons. You have access to weapons. Is nobody going to make an attempt to escape? Like, what are you guys gonna do? His friend already looks as if he was proper, like, beaten to submission already. It looks like they weren't really planning on going anywhere. So it cut after that to the scene with Galadriel and Halbrand. Galadriel waking up from a bed, looking all pristine and white and nice, and Halbrand sitting in a chair looking at her as she's getting up all raggy-daggy, same as he was before they got rescued. But somehow Galadriel is all crisp and clean. And then she promptly realizes that she doesn't have a dagger anymore. The sailors came for her, and there's a gentleman that we assume is a captain, who we then find out is Elendil, comes up to her and they have a conversation, and right away she just acts very unlikable. There's no other word for it, guys. Like, every time this woman opens up her mouth, she's just so unlikable. And she notices that he has the knife because he has it tucked in his waistband, other than away, out of sight. For what reason, I don't know. They gave no explanation. They just show it, and she somehow restrains herself from actually trying to grab it. Because I thought she was gonna fight for it. I thought she was gonna fight, but you know, she restrained herself, which is good. Okay. I must note though that the sailors' outfits just looked very weird, but I do like their theme song. I like their theme song. It was very empowering. So it then cuts to them going into Numenor, and we see this big scene. The music was beautiful. The imagery was beautiful. And then it comes to like them on a smaller boat. And it seems as if everybody has a habit of standing on boats instead of sitting down. Like, they're on a tiny boat and they're all standing up. Like, aren't you afraid that the thing is gonna tip over? Especially if you have captives. You're not expecting captives to stand up and just passively keep themselves there. They're gonna try to escape. I don't understand that. They realize right away that Galadriel is an elf from the port, and whispers start to go through, and then she's doing this very casual walk. Again, no sense of urgency. You are basically a captive at this point. And She's not restrained in any way. She's just doing a casual stroll as if she knows the city already. There's just only like 2 soldiers behind her, and she and Halbrand are there having a little casual conversation, all handy and dandy. Everybody's there whispering, oh, she's an elf, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And then they go into Numenor, where they go into the council meeting or whatever. Halbrand is there basically telling Galadriel to chill the F out somehow, because he probably knows that she's not sensible. As they pass through Numenor, Halbrand glances at a forge, which is supposed to allude to the fact that allude to the fact that he might be Sauron for book readers. She then ends up going in front of the Queen Regent, Tarmiriel. You know my thoughts on that. Check my last video. But she's there in front of the Queen, and she has to be told by Halbrand to kneel, which I find was odd because Galadriel is supposed to be thousands of years old. Yep, like according to them, she's supposed to be younger for an elf, but she's like still thousands of years old by that point, guys. So wouldn't she already know the customs of Numenor, especially if she's so familiar with the Numenorians? Wouldn't she already know their customs, whether or not they should stand or kneel? Because promptly, as they're kneeling, about to kneel, Tarmiriel then says, no one kneels in Numenor. Wouldn't Galadriel know? Wouldn't she be the one to tell Halbrand not to kneel? And then, right off the bat, Galadriel opens her mouth again and almost gets herself in crap, because she's just such an unlikable character, which blows my mind because Galadriel herself is Elven royalty. So wouldn't you know how to conduct yourself with negotiations, at least conducting yourself in court? But no, not Galadriel. She just comes off as very irrational, irresponsible, brash, selfish, and just completely unlikable. I'm sorry, I don't like her. I don't like her character at all. While she was in the council area, Galadriel gets like her Khaleesi moment where she tells her titles and whatever not.
Galadriel of the Noldor, daughter of the Golden House of Finarfin, commander of the northern armies of High King Gil-galad.
It was just laughable to me, especially considering that right after Halbrand did his introduction, but before he did his introduction, he was looking at her like, girl, what the heck? And then he did his introduction, it was just like, you know, whatever. And I kind of had to laugh at how, just not even what they were saying, but Halbrand's look as he looked at Galadriel at that point in time. I was like, and it seems as if Tarmiriel and Farazan are chummy with each other, which isn't out of the world because they're actually two versions of the story. Even though Tarmiriel was forcibly married by Farazan, there is also a version of the story where she actually fell in love with him. So at this point in time, it's like you're getting the sense that maybe Tarmiriel is not, you know, on the good side. They got to a scene where Halbrand somehow stole the knife that Elendil took, Galadriel's knife, and there was a very awkward scene between Halbrand and Galadriel. Awkward for me because I couldn't watch it. It was just very uncomfortable. They're trying to hint something very romantic between them, and I can't. After the scene where she gets back her knife, it then cuts to Isildur on a I don't know up to this point even what they were trying to convey with that scene. Like, they saw him like longingly glancing at an island. There was like a sigh of his name somewhere, and then one guy, they were trying to make drama by having a guy lose focus of his rope and end up trying to do a typical rope sequence where he almost gets thrown overboard because he's on the rope, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean, but they did it very awkwardly where you're wondering what was the need. And then you have the captain talking about the sea is always right. I was very confused by that scene. They cut to them on the shoreline where you find out he has a sister, and they try to make a funny moment with his sister and the horse, like where his sister's thinking that he's coming to hug her when he's coming to hug the horse. It was so flat, and even the dialogue there is so crappy because like their mantra is like the sea is always right. Like, Then it then cuts again to Elendil and Muriel. She's questioning him, being all haughty and whatever, and it seems as if she's gonna punish him. She's like, oh, it's treason. He gets a worried look on his face. To be honest with you, Elendil's character is my favorite so far because he just seems a lot more realistic in terms of his acting. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Boromir, to be honest with you. I like his acting. He's a favorite character so far. But during the whole interaction between him and Muriel, where he looks a little bit worried as if she's gonna punish him, it's like she gives him a task instead. Then it cuts to the Southlands again, where it kind of emphasizes the point that the orcs are afraid of sunlight. They get hurt by the sunlight. Arondir is the only one that looks as if he wants to plot his escape. He's like, you know, he looks concerned as if like, hey, we need to get out. He's there talking with his warden and his elf friend, and they're having a little bit of a dialogue there about who the head honko is. Apparently, especially the Adar person, they were alluding to the fact that Adar is an elven name, trying to say, oh, you know, it's a little bit strange how it has an elven name. The orcs all of a sudden got fed up with the slow progress, especially the fact that they were trying to go around a huge tree instead of cutting down the tree, when everything else around them was already cut down. And they're making a big deal of this tree not cutting down the tree, you know, because elves appreciate life apparently. You know, they're making a big issue of this tree, and the orcs, they were like, oh, I appreciate your bravery, and they were like, I'm gonna reward you with some water. And the warden, yeah, he looks straight down with suspicion, but he ends up drinking the water. Then he passes it to Arondir, who drinks the water. Then he passes it to the friend, who, as he drinks the water, the orc suddenly reacts and, you know, gives him it could have been a dramatic scene. However, right as that happened, they slowed down everything, giving a slow-mo, and gives a little bit of a sorrowful scene for a character we aren't even close to. Even with the wound, especially with a wound like that, there would have been a lot more stuff shooting out. It just looked as if like it was like a paper cut that was like there instead of a slash that, you know, brought him to the Hall of Mandos. It had potential, but then they ruined it with the slow motion. There was an emotional part where they're still arguing about the tree, and then Arondir, with the fall of his friend, just says, I'm gonna do it. I'll cut down the tree. And then there's a dramatic sequence where he goes up towards the tree, and then you see the wasteland, you know, cut like that. And then you saw like an overall image of the wasteland and this path that they were doing, which, number one, somehow they missed that they were cutting down a whole bunch of trees and places were getting destroyed. Number two, if you're building a tunnel, why are you covering the top of the tunnel with paper? Like, wouldn't you suppose that the tunnel would be underground where it can't really be seen? But I guess that they did it with dramatic purposes, but to me it just didn't look practical. But it had the most potential so far. Like, the orc scenes I find are the ones that had the most potential, but they just didn't do it the way that they were supposed to do it. And then it cuts to Galadriel's escape, where they kind of made her look like a Disney princess escaping, like and then she jumps down, makes a show of hiding her ears as if that's gonna camouflage her. Like, girl, you just walk through Numenor where everybody knows who you are. Everybody could spot you are an elf from the fort, even with your ears covered. Yes, your hair was covering your ears as you were going through Numenor, but they still realized that you were an elf. Like, you had nothing to cover your face. You're not covering your face right now. How is that a disguise? I don't know. She makes a little escape, but then Elendil finds her. Elendil kind of alludes to the fact that he's on the good side, and that there was a hall, like a library of some sorts, where Galadriel finally shows some emotion. It's like, oh, bring me there. Before the emotion, she was, as usual, acting all belligerent and acting as if she has zero sense. That's all I can say about that shot. After she finds out that there is a library where, you know, all the records are still preserved and whatever, she asks Elendil to bring her there, and then they go on a little horsey ride. When she hears his horses, she goes on a little horsey ride through the landscape, which was very beautiful, until they slowed it down. And you get a big wide shot of Galadriel's big grin that just looks super creepy. And just, that shot was just not it. And then you cut to Halbrand, who goes to the forge, trying to finagle his way to be an apprentice or whatever, and they told him, no, you have to be a part of the guild. So he goes and he gets food, which he paid for, and I'm there wondering where he got the money to pay for it, because, you know, somehow the money escaped with everything else that he had on the ship, I suppose, like everything personal. Somehow he had the money. I mean, if he had the necklace like that he had, like surely it still had money. Would it still work in Numenor? I don't know. If he never even knew about Numenor, would the currency that he had even work in Numenor? I don't know. Plot. As he sits down to eat, typical scene, some men come up and they're like, oh, you're there eating our food, drinking our wine. There was almost like an altercation. And then Halbrand finesses them and being like, oh, I'm gonna buy drinks for everyone. And then they're all friends afterward, because plot. Then you see him walking down the street, and then the guys ended up following him. The same guys he was just about to have an altercation with, because we find out that he tried to steal their guild sign or whatever in order to, I guess, go to the forge or whatever. Then you had the epic fight scene, which somehow Halbrand was able to survive against a gang of Numenorians who are supposed to be like bigger, stronger, longer lives than him, a human. Supposedly. But you know, if it was Sauron, it would make sense. Then it cuts back to Galadriel in the hall library area. I forget the name of the place. But you see a portrait of Elros, who looks like Elrond, because, you know, twins, they're twins. Twinsies. There's a section where Elendil's talking about Tar Palantir. They're saying that he was the previous ruler who got usurped because he was one of the faithful, and somehow they're wondering, okay, so you usurp his throne, make him exile in his own country, but then you still put his daughter on the throne. I mean, wouldn't it make sense to put somebody who you know directly aligns with your goals on the throne instead of his daughter? Yeah, that was a thought I had. I have a little guest right here. Hello, baby girl. Hi. Anyway, guys. Yeah, so I have to quickly finish this video. So let's just go through this really quickly. So Galadriel now, promptly, there's no searching, reading the entire, like, she just somehow finds the scroll that she sees the sign of Sauron, which somehow they find out is like Mordor, or rather they call it the Southlands, which everybody pretty much figured out before even she did. But it goes to show that, like, oh, you're telling me thousands of years that they're fighting Morgoth and Sauron, and you're telling me no one figured it out. Only Galadriel had to find that out, right? And then she is somehow able to interpret Black speech, which is Sauron's, the language that Sauron himself developed, to figure out their master plan that they laid out so conveniently on paper for a backup plan. Everything here is just so convenient that there's no suspense. There's no suspense. There's no trial. There's no journey of trying to find the answers. It's just all falling into her lap. And that's pretty much all 3 episodes. Every episode, just things just conveniently happen to her. And she just always has no character development during this entire period of time, because she's just always brash, selfish, irresponsible, and just belligerent, and not at all the lady that she's supposed to be. I just can't. Then he goes back to the Harfoots again. Cuts to the father and I guess his wife talking about the migration. Apparently these guys migrate. Find out really that the Harfoots have like a tradition of when they migrate, they don't follow the soldier's mantra. No, not Harfoots. You know, they don't follow, you know how the phrase leave no man behind or no man left behind? That's not the Harfoots. The Harfoots is the complete opposite. If you fall back, you get left behind. There's no coming back for you. You have to fend for yourself, ma'am. We will remember you in our tribute. write your name down and how you died and make fun of you of how you died. That's why they were so concerned about the dad's foot being broken, because they're about to do a migration, and if you get left behind, you get left behind. Nobody's coming to help you. No, apparently the Harfoots are very selfish. Nori went into steal one of Sadok's constellation things with the help of Poppy, and gives it to the sorcerer that we're not supposed to know who he is, and he's perusing it around the fire, which apparently no one realizes he's there, and the paper gets on fire somehow, and the guy who arrives in the meteor man who comes in a ball of fire, and did so much magic to make this fire disappear and come back on and wait again, somehow can't put out a paper fire, and gets frightened by it, moving around like he's a headless chicken, and he gets found out. He calls out Nori's name, and now everybody's looking at Nori, and Nori gets punished. She almost gets expelled, like, or exiled or whatever, but then because she's young, they had pity on her. And then it cuts to Halbrand, who got arrested for the fight with the big Numenorians that he's not supposed to defeat. And you find him in a cell, and Galadriel, she saunters her little smug self there and somehow finds the same sign that Halbrand has around his neck, to connect it to somebody who united the South prior, to kind of allude to the fact that maybe Halbrand is the heir to the person who united the Southlands against them, and tries to convince him to become the next Aragorn, I suppose. Halbrand is like a mismatch of characters. He's either going to be Sauron or the Witch King, but for sure, he's not going to be good. That's what I can tell you. I think they're starting to set that up with the fact that that's where she's going to get backstabbed. And that's where we can finally see some character growth. So I guess we'll see. And then it goes back to the Harfoots and Nori, where the father is struggling because they get punished. I forgot to mention this. They get punished by being in the back of the line, where if they fall behind, no one helps them. He's struggling. They're falling way behind. The only person who stops is Poppy. Eventually, the sorcerer comes in, and he has like a Frankenstein moment where he's like, friend. Good. Nori gets the idea, yeah, this is how we're gonna keep up with the rest of them. He's gonna help us. Right, baby girl? Then it goes to the Southlands again, where you finally have a bit of rebellion. There's a huge fight scene, which, again, could have been good if for some moments. Arondir downs the tent and exposes them to the sun. When he does that, the head orc, I forget his name, he has a Davy Jones moment where he's like, release the walk. The Kraken! And then you have some crazy dog look-alike. These words look like some angry chihuahuas. The CGI just makes it all laughable. I'm sorry. It's horrible. In the scene, the warden is supposed to escape, but right as he is about to escape, and Arondir is on the side about to him escape as well, the warden gets shot. I actually get slightly emotional there because we see a little bit more of the warden and we're starting to get connected to him, and then he dies, which I kind of saw coming anyway. An orc comes up and pulls back Arondir, and we get the scene where he's falling back into the pit. He almost gets killed again, but then they decide, oh, we're gonna bring him to Adar. And then you see a fuzzy image. You see long hair. You think it's an elf, especially with the elvish name. But then as he gets closer, even though you're not seeing the face never gets exposed, guys. But as he gets closer, you can see a little bit of deformation in the face structure. So I believe it's another orc. The Urkai weren't formed until much longer, like under Saruman. But I feel like it's another orc. But it's probably one of the better looking orcs, like a orc that looks more elvish than orcish. But because I could see a bit of deformation, so he was probably either in the middle of a transition, because we know that orcs are supposed to be corrupted, a corruption of elves, like alluding to the corruption of God's children, basically. So maybe this was an elf that was halfway in between corrupted, but not corrupted fully to look as deformed as an orc. If he's a full elf, then he's a really, really ugly one. It's not Sauron. It's not an elf. It's an orc. And we'll find out next week. Or rather this week. When this goes up, it's going to be this week. So ends episode 3. In some ways, it was better because the pace slowed down a little bit. It wasn't... Some areas, even though they cut it at certain points, they didn't cut it to the point where you're absolutely frustrated when they skip to a different scene. Overall, it was an okay episode. It was still boring. They're halfway through the season, basically, almost. We have one more episode before they're halfway through. And they're still introducing characters, and I'm still not connected to any of the characters that they introduced so far. The main character is absolutely selfish and irresponsible and very belligerent and extremely unlikable. The character that they're trying to set her up with, nobody likes that dynamic, and they better not go with that dynamic. That would be a huge mistake for them. They better not try it. All these episodes are pretty forgettable, in my opinion. I forgot most of what happened in the first 2 episodes, and I'm quickly forgetting what happened in the 3rd episode. If it wasn't for the fact that I made notes, I couldn't tell you what I was thinking. I could only tell you everything was boring and forgettable. I don't do ratings because I'm very bad at rating stuff. But I'll tell you, my overall impression of all the episodes was very meh so far. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like this video if you like it. Subscribe if you're new here. And hit the notification bell to get notified each time I make a post. Yeah, I will be watching the rest of the episodes. It would be very tragic if we get to pretty much the end and we're still not connected to anybody. Like the video if you like it. Follow me on all of my social media platforms. I'm KFalcon everywhere. K.Falcon on Instagram, K_Falcon on Twitter, and KFalcon on Facebook. Follow me here as well as there. I'll see you guys in the next video. We'll chat to you later. Bye.